Good morning. It is Wednesday, March the 30th, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the daily declaration for spiritual warfare and the Star-Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance, we will have news conference, DeSantis, direct democracy, the difference between, Disney greeting, homeless versus squatters, no free lunch, back to school, and chapter 6 of the book Shadowbosses. All that and more when I get back. Thank you. And now the daily declaration for spiritual warfare for March the 30th. I will guide you continually. I will be your hiding place, and I will protect you from trouble. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. I will always guide you and provide good things to eat when you are in the desert. I will make you healthy. You will be like a garden that has plenty of water, or like a stream that never runs dry. I will clear a path in your desert and will make a straight road for you to follow. I am able to fill in every valley you face and to flatten every hill and mountain that seem to hinder your way. I will level the rough and rugged ground so that all may see that my glory surrounds your path. Psalm 32, verses 7 through 8, Isaiah chapter 58, verse 11, and Isaiah chapter 40, verses 1 through 4. Prayer declaration. Father, guide me continually with your eye. Guide me by the skillfulness of your hands. Lead me in a plain path because of my enemies. Make the crooked places straight and the rough places smooth before me. Send out your light and truth and let them lead me. Teach me to do your will and lead me into the land of uprightness. Amen. And that was the daily declaration for spiritual warfare for March the 30th. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He is religious and realistic. He is the person that understands that culture is the foundation for politics. He acknowledges a benevolent universe. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Thank you, thank you. What are the tactics in support of the strategy to rid America of socialist influence? The long-term tactics are to be a true conservative, talk like a conservative, act like a conservative, dress like a conservative, and think like a conservative. The short-term tactics are rhetorical. True conservatives need to win all of the arguments. That means don't prove a negative. Don't take their word for it. Don't be neutral, and ask plenty of questions. Thank you, thank you. What is the true conservative strategy for defeating socialists in this country? Socialists must be driven from positions of power, and since it is lefty counterculture that provides the foundation for their political success, true conservatives must resist left-wing counterculture and promote normal American culture. By changing our culture, we will change our politics. And by changing the culture, we mean you need to get married, have a family, and raise your children. Thank you, thank you. What are the true conservative political priorities? Number 1, the abolition of abortion throughout the land. Number 2, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Number 3, the immediate decertification of all public employee unions. Number 4, the immediate assignment of criminal and civil liabilities to all government regulators. Number 5, the immediate repeal of the so-called Patriot Act. Number 6, the immediate repeal of all emergency dictator laws. Number 7, the reinstatement of writs of outlawry. Number 8, government-sponsored recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. 9, a flexible minimum wage. And 10, means-tested health care. Thank you, thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Number 1, bring back not-for-profit news. 2, destroy the cult of promiscuity. 3, destroy the cult of neutrality. 4, destroy the cult of personality. 5, destroy the cult of imagination. 6, destroy the cult of reinvention. And we destroy these cults by replacing them with values. Thank you, thank you. What is the difference between the true and not so true conservative? Quite simply, the true conservative has the courage of his convictions. Thank you, thank you. Listening to Hugh Hewitt this morning, and again, he's always triggering me and pissing me off in various ways, shapes, or forms. Everything's about him. It's just him. He can't help himself. No matter what they're talking about, he's got to put himself as the star of the conversation. But the Hollywood stunt that was pulled last night. A couple of things about that. One of them was that Hugh Hewitt was saying that never violence. Violence is never indicated, and the true conservative knows that yes, violence is sometimes called for. Now, we can have an argument or a discussion about whether or not violence was called for in last night's award ceremony. We can do that, but the idea that violence is never called for is absolutely ridiculous. If that was the truth, then we wouldn't have a Second Amendment to the Constitution, for one thing. So the other thing, again, is that he has this big overinflated ego. He talking about how many years he's been in the business. I've been doing radio since this and television since that. And, of course, so it's always all about Hugh. So, but again, and then last night, the other thing is where Hugh is saying, oh, no, it was absolutely genuine. It was false. It was improvised. That, a lot of people seemed stunned, of course, because it was improvised, but it was false. And we know it was false for just the reactions. Everything about it just reeks of falseness. And one of the things that reeks of falseness is the number one rule in Hollywood. If you're going to get into a fight with another actor, you never, ever hit them in the face. Never. You just don't do that, because if you leave a mark, if you get a scar, if you disfigure them in any way, shape, or form, it could ruin their career. Okay? And so having a career in Hollywood is a rather dicey proposition to begin with. And then you add something like some kind of, even a small disfigurement, so now if he had gone up there and hit the other guy in the stomach, it would have rang truer. But everything about it rang false. The supposed insult, which wasn't an insult, the timing, it took the one guy that was sitting down on an inordinate amount of time to get up and get outraged, and get up and go over and, pretend to slap the other guy. So the timing was bad. Chris Rock overreacted in the way he moved his head. There was no slap sound. You would expect somebody that got hit as hard as Will Smith pretended to hit him, if he really did it, that there would have been an audible sound. But so anyways, it was all faked up. Why they decided to do that, I don't know. It maybe ratings. I mean, that's the only thing. It's a ratings issue. It's always a ratings issue, and I don't know why I'm confused. Why would I be confused about that? Shame on you, Ron. But anyways, so that's the way it is with him. But one of the big mistakes that talk show hosts make is talking too much about themselves. Thank you. The interview that was played on right-wing talk radio yesterday, and this is, again, one of the big mistakes that conservatives make, and one of the big mistakes that talk radio hosts make, and apparently one of the big mistakes that the Fox News Washington press corps make, is not listening carefully to your opponents. And in this particular case, it would be President Wrong. And there's a press conference. Mr. Fox News asks President Wrong a question about the world's viewpoint of us. How can the world take us seriously? Roughly, how can the world take us seriously if everything you're saying is getting contradicted? Now, he didn't put contradicted. He said walked back. Mistake number one, never use their lingo. Never honor these people by using their effing lingo. Just don't do it. Okay? Walked back means contradicted. There were several areas in which President Wrong said something, and his press corps or his press secretary or whoever at the White House contradicted him. We're going to respond in kind. Oh, no. He didn't mean we're going to use biological or chemical weapons, that kind of thing. So the Fox reporter asks about this, and Joe Biden does what I would have done too, to assert control of the conversation. And that is, you say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? What do you mean? And Mr. Fox News fell for it. What he should have said was, you know what I mean. Or he could have said, are you telling me that you have forgotten? Are you telling me and telling the world that you don't remember what you said? That puts him back on the spot. But instead, Mr. Fox News, who's obviously conservative because he's stupid, or pretend conservative, not a real conservative, reactionary, because he's stupid, goes ahead and tells the president, well, this happened, that happened, the other happened. He gives 3 examples. And of course, the president says, none of that happened. And he can say that with a straight face and with credibility, because what Mr. Fox News is doing is paraphrasing. He's not giving exact quotes. And Mr. Wrong, President Wrong, knows that that's what Fox News is going to do. They know that Fox News doesn't have the quotes right at their fingertips. So they're going to have to come out and give an approximation, a paraphrase of what it is that was said. And then President Wrong can honestly say, sorry, that didn't happen. Sorry, Charlie, that didn't happen. So now, and then Mr. Fox News was left with, that didn't happen. And now he has nowhere to go. Absolutely nowhere to go. Excellent question to put the president on the spot. And he deserved to be put on the spot. But you allowed him to wriggle out. And that's the biggest mistake that conservatives make. Listen. And when somebody's asking you, what do you mean? You always come back and ask them or tell them, you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. Or ask the question, are you telling me, in this particular case, are you telling everybody, are you telling the world you don't remember what you said? That would have been that would have been the A+ response right there. You're telling the whole world you don't remember what you said? And now he's really, really on the spot. But he let him off the hook. What a shame. So now what has to happen is then I'm sure that's why the talk show hosts come into this. They have to clean it up. They have to try to explain everything and try to reassure everybody that it is the president that looks bad and not Mr. Fox News reporter. So remember that. Somebody is telling you, what are you talking about? The proper answer, the best answer is, ask them a question. You mean you don't remember? Or you can say, you know what I'm talking about. Boom, and that shuts that down. Because they love the explanation. You give the explanation, and unless it's an exact quote, and even if it's an exact quote, they can always say, push comes to shove, I don't remember, or I didn't remember saying it that way. Okay, so it's a wriggle out way, a way of them escaping accountability. We always complain on the right, how come nobody's held accountable anymore? This is one of the reasons why. Listen and make sure that they are held accountable. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. No, I don't. Are you telling everybody that you don't remember what you said? So you put the pressure right back on them. That's a winner. So again, when they try to tell you they don't know what you're talking about, you tell them they do. Thank you. So Ron DeSantis, governor of the state of Florida. So there's been a big deal about whatever's going on in Florida with Disney and some bill that was passed. And I'm blowing it off because it's none of my business. I don't care. If Florida does their thing, California, I live in California, California does its thing, et cetera. It's not a federal issue, so I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not going to waste time spending a lot of time thinking about it. However, since all the right-wing talk show hosts want to put him on the air and put his press conference on the air, I get to listen to him. And one of the things that I've noticed with him is that he's just about flawless in terms of, I can't think of any major mistake that this guy has made. He has been solid, rock solid. He has been really what he amounts to is Donald Trump without the gaffes, without the tweets, without the, without the wincing. I don't have to wince when I listen to Ron DeSantis. He says the right thing in the right way, and he does it every time. To me, he looks better and better every day as a potential Republican candidate for President of the United States in 2024. And Disney looks like a company whose stock I wouldn't want to own. And if I did, I'd be ashamed of it. Thank you. So one of the biggest mistakes that so-called ersatz conservatives make is allowing themselves to be intimidated into believing that we live in a direct democracy and acting like we live in a direct democracy instead of in a republic. For instance, running around asking everybody's opinion. You hear the talk show host do that. What's your opinion about what's happening internationally? Putin is doing this, so-and-so is doing that. China, do you think that the United States should defend Taiwan? All that kind of thing. When I don't think about it. I don't waste my time with that because I know what's real. And what's real is that we live in a constitutional republic. I help to elect people to bother with that. That's their job. It is the administration's job to concern itself with Taiwan. It is to concern itself with what's going on over in Europe, to concern itself with all foreign affairs. That's the job of the federal government. So this is not a direct democracy. My opinion in most things government doesn't count. Okay? The way it works is that at certain times and places, my opinion counts and is very important. And that is every 2 years on election day. That's when my opinion counts and counts most. Also, my opinion counts most in cultural issues. That's where I can really make the big difference. Whether or not I raise my children and how I raise my children can not only have an effect now on our country, but can have an effect on this country for the next 60, 70, 80 years. So, again, to sum up, this is not a direct democracy. Don't let yourself be lured into acting as though this is a direct democracy when in fact it is a constitutional republic. Thank you. I just heard about Walt Disney or Disneyland or Disney World, whatever. They're changing their greeting. It used to be, good morning or good afternoon, men and women, girls and boys. And now they're just going to say friends because they want to be more inclusive. So the true conservative perspective on this is if Disney's making the change because that they recognize that they have somehow made an error, that has been brought to their attention and evidence has been shown that they're doing something wrong and they're correcting an error, then it's good. If, on the other hand, they are going ahead and making this change without any evidence that they've made some sort of an error or some sort of a mistake, and they're doing it merely to placate somebody or somebodies, that's bad. Thank you. The difference between being homeless and being a squatter is the difference between being a victim and being a perpetrator. Thank you. And now, Tales from My Bicentennial Year, Chapter 2, Back to School. As the summer of 1975 wound down, my mother's attitude became more cheerful. Her mood seemed lighter. Come to think of it, she was always happier as fall approached. Gone was the scolding voice that would shout, "Leave your sister alone, find something to do, and get out of the house." Gone was our routine. We would begin to be forced to play numbers games, review flashcards, and now our grammar was constantly being corrected. Soon the justification for this mood became evident. As I was watching Captain Kangaroo one morning while casually eating some dry Cheerios, sitting on my favorite spot on our worn-out plaid colonial-style couch, I heard the following. Mr. Green Jeans, the captain, Bunny Rabbit, Mr. Moose, and the rest of the gang, as they were saying goodbye, said, "We hope you had a great summer and are helping Mom as you get ready to go back to school." My sister Kathy and I just about choked on our Cheerios. What? Summer is over? It just started. It couldn't be over. We have so much to do. We looked at each other, turned pale white, and screamed, "Mom! Summer isn't over, is it?" With this commotion, my mother made her entrance from the kitchen into the living room. On her face was the smile of the cat that ate the canary. I could still see the tail feathers floating around her eyes. "Yes, my children," she coolly replied. "Summer is over, and this year I am happy to announce that each and every one of you will be attending school in some shape, form, or fashion." My youngest brother at the time, Kevin, was old enough to start kindergarten. "You have exactly 2 weeks and you will all be in school. And later today your father will be home early to take us all school clothes shopping. And you better behave. You know how much your father likes to shop," she said empathetically. This was now perhaps the worst morning a 10-year-old can have. First, you find out that you only have 2 weeks until school starts, but even worse, you have to go school clothes shopping. For those of you that grew up without a bunch of brothers and sisters, school shopping may actually have been a fun experience. But for me, it was ruthless. My father arrived home around 3 p.m. This for him was like taking a day off. Back then he was trying, and now successfully has, to start his own business, insurance business. I think that year we saw him 3 times. The man worked like a dog. My mom had never learned how to drive and was not about to start now. So anywhere she wanted to go, dear old Dad was the chauffeur. With Dad so busy, he hated to miss any work and any opportunity for business. His saying was, "The busy man gets the business," whatever that meant. So when he had to miss work, he was usually in a foul mood. We were all in a crabby mood. We didn't want to go either, but we piled into the car. My father drove a 1974 Plymouth Fury 3 station wagon. This was back when they made cars, not engines with wheels on them. The car had a 29-cylinder engine. The hood of the car was 12 feet long. The body was maroon red and, of course, fake wood panel down the sides. We thought it must have had retractable wind sails or something because my dad kept referring to it as a boat. For a while, I actually thought it could float. The smaller kids sat in the back seat right behind Mom and Dad. To call the back seat a seat wasn't correct either. Back then, the back seat was bigger than our couch in the living room. I swear there were times when you could have had 8 of our aunts and uncles all in the back seat at the same time. Kathy and I took the very back tailgate, which had the old-fashioned rumble seats. No, not that old-fashioned. The seats were inside the car. Back of the car was huge when the seats were down. There was room for all of us kids, plus a friend or two, to lie down and eat popcorn when we went to the drive-in movies. I know there are no drive-in movies anymore, but they sure were fun when I was little. Everyone would wear their pajamas. Dad would back up the car so that when we lay down, we were facing the screen. He and Mom would sit on lawn chairs right next to us. The speakers were these big tin boxes of sound that you had to hang just right in the car. We always wanted to go to the snack bar stand, but Mom always brought our snacks and a great big pitcher of Kool-Aid to drink. Anyhow, we drove what seemed like hours. We heard a little conversation between my parents in the front seat. For the most part, there were only a few small squabbles between the kids. Then we arrived at the Mecca, my mom's favorite store. To her, this was the holy grail of shopping, a place where she could buy all of our clothes, or a washer and dryer, a new piece of furniture, bed sheets, and God knows what else. As we pulled into the parking lot and could see the large red-colored sign glowing on the roof of the building, I saw my mom smile, as if a beam of the red sign glow had just grazed her face and brightened her day. We had arrived at Sears and Roebuck's. My mother was ready to do like Casey in the Sunshine Band and get down tonight. Mom told us to get out of the car, but before we did, my dad's head circled back and said, "Hold it. Let's get the rules straight. No fighting. Pay attention. Do what your mother says. Listen to the guy. If he asks you a question, answer it. There'll be no funny business of any kind. You will like what your mother picks out for you. There are no questions asked. As a matter of fact, from now on, don't say anything at all. Are we clear?" Well, he'd gotten himself all worked up, and we weren't even out of the car yet. "Are we clear?" he yelled more forcefully. Not one of us answered. "Are we clear?" he yelled again, even harder. Not one of us answered. Finally, I spoke up and I said, "Pops." I don't know why, but one day I started calling my dad Pops, and it has always stuck. "You just told us from now on, don't say anything at all." "You know what I meant. Don't say anything stupid at all." Back in a minute. Thank you. With that said and agreed on, we were ordered out of the car and herded into a single file, oldest to youngest. Then we were marched into Sears, not to pick out our clothes, but to get measured. We all walked to the dressing room area, where we were ordered to stop, turn about face, and stand at attention, facing the Sears man. With a tape measure around his neck, he proceeded from youngest to oldest, getting all types of measurements. All the while, my mother was looking at the Sears catalog with the Sears lady. My father just stood there like a drill sergeant, making sure we all stood tall and answered all questions. We were then measured for shoes. Once the feet were measured, we were instructed to sit in a row of chairs around the corner. There we sat for what seemed like 3 days while we waited for the fate of our upcoming school year's fashion from Sears. Once in a while, the Sears man or the lady would come around the corner and hand us a lollipop and tell us how well-behaved we were. I always thought she would be well-behaved, too, if she had our drill sergeant. When the lollipops were done, my father collected the sticks, wiped faces, and gave us the order to stand at attention once more. He gave my mother the "let's get the hell out of here" look. My mom looked back at him with her "I still have things to look for" look. They both stared at each other for it seemed like an eternity, however long that is, waiting for the other to back down. My father still stared at her, but slowly moved his head and eyes around to us, making my mom's eyes follow his to our pathetic little faces. She then, in a stroke of brilliance, announced very loudly to us, my father, and to all the Sears employees, "Why don't you and the kids wait in the car? I have to sign some things and look at some things, and I will be out." She had won the stare down. My father, realizing he had lost the "let's get the hell out of here" battle, took his consolation prize of at least leaving the store and marched us out. As we were marched out of the store, we were told to proceed directly to the car. Do not touch anything on the way out. We got to the car, got in our seats, and Pops made sure we were all buckled in. There were no car seats back then. Heck, seatbelts were just beginning to be encouraged for use. While we sat in the car, my Pops got out and stood by his car door. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a pack of Marlboros. Yes, way back then, everybody smoked. He searched around in his pockets for something and finally pulled out a pack of matches, lit his cigarette, and smoked it. He seemed relieved, if only for a moment. He got back in the car, and while he was out, I had started the staring game with my sister Chris, which, when done correctly, would drive her crazy. She could not stand to be stared at. As my dad sat back in the car, Chrissy began to yell that I was staring at her and to stop it. This happened a few more times. My Pops, too tired to say anything to me, let it go. A few more times and he had to react. He whipped his head around, looked right at me, and surprisingly quietly whispered to me, "If you would like to keep using your eyeballs, stop staring at her, or I will give you a George the Animal steel eye rake." That worked for me. I knew my dad loved wrestling on TV. It was always on after church on Sunday. That was his thing. We would practically run out of church to get home in time to watch wrestling. Now my father had taken the kids out to the car, had a smoke, disarmed a potential fight, and you could tell was ready to go home. Only problem was, Mom was still in Sears. My father was a man of little patience. Actually, make that a man of absolutely no patience. We waited in the car another smoke longer, then another fight longer, then a little longer. Then just as my dad's head was about to explode, my mom came out of Sears. The smile on her face said, "Mission accomplished." The mission accomplished smile quickly went away when she saw my dad's death stare. The death stare only came out when he was really pissed. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now excuse me. So we only saw it once a day or so. He would bite his lower lip, squint his eyes, and massage his temples while turning beet red. I swear I saw steam coming out of his ears. My mom, in turn, gave him the, "I am sorry, don't get mad at me. Your kids need clothes, and beside, I only ask you to do this once a year look." Now, mind you, no words were exchanged. My mom got in the car and shut the door. Without looking at my father, she said, "Thank you, and let's go get some supper. It's too late for me to cook." My father raised his eyebrows and turned to Mom with the, "You've got to be kidding me look. Out to supper. I have worked all day, went to Sears, and now you want me to take everyone to dinner look." Mom looked back at him, nodded her head yes, and said, "Thank you." With that, we were off to my dad's favorite diner, Howard Johnson's. The rest of the week proceeded slowly. The entire neighborhood was caught up in the back-to-school blues. Of course, Raggedy Ann and Andy were looking forward to it, proudly announcing to everyone that they had already bought their new school notebooks and were even studying with flashcards. Mike Cinzano, who's always trying to be the funny man, got sick of listening to Ann and Andy and said to them, "Why don't you make it like a tree and leave? Get it? Or better yet, make like a banana and split." As they sat and looked at each other and then back at Mike, he said, "You heard me. Make like diarrhea and run." Brad chimed in, "Make like a rock and roll on out of here." Raggedy Ann and Andy took the hint and moved on to my sister Chrissy, who was actually pretty good friends with Raggedy Ann. After they left, Mike yelled out, "Hey, I got a couple of more jokes." "You ready?" Mike, for a kid of 10, did have some pretty good material some of the time, and then again he bombed more than once. Yeah, we're ready," we yelled back. "What do evil chickens lay?" "Deviled eggs. Get it?" Yeah, we all got that one. "Why did the pig want to become an actor?" "Because he was a big ham. Get it?" Ha ha. Yeah, we got that one too. "What do you get if you cross an elephant and a fish?" "Swimming trunks. Get it?" Ha ha. Arr. We all said, yes, we get it. "One more," says Mike. "Where does Tony Orlando wake up?" "The crack of dawn. Get it?" None of us got the joke at that time, not even Mike. Turns out he heard it from his brother John. Mike said his brother laughed pretty hard, so he figured it must be funny. Back in a minute. Thank you. Oops. On Friday morning, we were all starting to get together for a baseball game. Most of the street was rooting for the Red Sox to make the playoffs, so we were going to play the Third Streeters, who we called the Yankees. I realize 1 million plus people love the Yankees. Let me tell you, you either love the Yankees or hate them. We all hated them. It just seemed that they would go out and raid the other teams for players. My dad said it wasn't fair and that George Steinbrenner was not good for the game. Looking back on it now, Big George is revered with, I think, 7 or so World Series titles. But anyways, just as we were going over the rules, our rules for baseball changed on a daily basis. You see, we had to adjust for things. The trees on the third base used to be an automatic out. This was changed to a ground rule double after a game-ending fight broke out between Huge Gene and Bobby Donlin. A big brown van was spotted coming down the street. It was slowing down as it reached my house. It turned into my driveway. The entire street ran to our house to see what this mysterious van was doing at our house. The man got out of the big van. He was dressed to look just like the van, all in brown from his head to his boots. He had a big rotund belly and smoking a cigar or something. He looked at me and said, "Hey kid, is your mom here?" "Hang on," I said. So I ran up the stairs and burst into the front door yelling for Mom. "Calm down and quit yelling. I'm right here. I see the guy is here. Tell him I'll be right out," my mom said. I ran back out, and the big guy had unloaded 5 big boxes. Each one had one of our names on it. One for Kathy, one for me, one for Chrissy, one for Karen, and one for Kevin. What great mysterious things were in the boxes for us? Was this the new bike I wanted all summer? Was it a new Easy Bake Oven for my sisters? My friends and I had broken my sister Kathy's Easy Bake Oven by making mud pies. Apparently the oven did not like being cleaned with the garden hose. Yes, while plugged in. My mother informed us to get the "We just got something new" look off your faces. "These are your new school clothes from Sears," she proudly announced. She shooed the other kids away and told us to march into the house and stand in front of our box. The big brown van driving guy carried all 5 of the big boxes into the house for my mom. As we lined up in front of our box, we were given the instructions, of course. We all knew the drill. I opened up my box, laid out my shirts, pants, underwear, socks, etc. My mom would come by, take inventory, and have us try on some things if she thought it was close to not fitting by eyeballing it. Back in a minute. Thank you. As I looked at my new clothes that I would be stuck with for the next year, I closed my eyes, sighed, and put my head down. I would have to wear the following this year. Pants. 5 pairs of Sears tough-skin jeans. I was fortunate in that I got 5 individual pairs with 5 unique colors. I now had a color for each day of the week. All I needed to do was figure out which day was red jean day, a green jean day, a yellow jean day, a brown jean day, and of course, a blue jean day. The Toughskins were the jean of choice for the entire street. They had some kind of plastic knee pad attached to the inside of the pants to avoid wearing out the knee. The knee patch was just one feature of the Toughskin jean. They also had a half-elastic waistband with belt loops, which expanded in case I got fat later in the year. They thought of everything except comfort. For the first few weeks, it felt like you were wearing sandpaper pants. Shirt, 1 white button-down collar shirt for special occasions, not to be worn unless told to. Shirts, 5 pairs of Sears tough-skin shirts. Luckily for me, the shirts were the same color as the pants, so I always knew what to wear. Red shirt, red pants. You get the idea. Shirt, 1 flannel shirt for winter, not to be worn unless told to. Socks, 10 pair of tube socks. Tube socks were long white socks with 2 stripes on the top. We always said the stripes on top matched NFL teams, but who knows? I knew I had red stripes for my red shirt with my red pants, and so on down the week. 10 pairs of underwear. White, thank God, at least these were not colored. 10 pairs of undershirts. White, crew neck. 1 pair of sneakers. Zips. These were sneakers that had a big Z on the side, and mine were white with a blue Z. After researching, I found that Zips were Sears' answer to Converse Chuck Taylors and a company just starting out called Nike. 1 pair of what I will call camel hair sand shoes. Please note that none of our clothes or shoes had Velcro on them. Too early. We had to tie our own shoes. So as the school year went on, I got into a routine. I would wear my blue outfit on Mondays, signifying my blue mood about going back to school. Tuesdays were my yellow day. Not sure why, just Tuesdays kind of feels like a yellow day. Wednesdays were my red day because this is the day that Mrs. Martin let me read and do impressions for the class, and she told me she liked Red on Me the best. Thursday, my brown day, because we had gym on Thursday, and back then you did not change for gym. You went outside in your school clothes, and I did not want to get my clothes muddy. I figured the dirt would hide better on brown clothes. Finally, Friday was my green day, because green meant go home. Back in a minute. Thank you. Mrs. Martin was also one of my favorite teachers ever. I think she genuinely liked me. I was always allowed to clown around with her, and I would be able to do stupid things to get her to smile, even when she was mad. Like the one day our class got a red flag at lunchtime. A red flag was what the lunch lady would come over and put on your table if your class was loud and basically obnoxious at lunch. Your teacher would come to pick you up and see this wooden red flag sitting in the middle of your table. You could also get a gold flag if your class was quiet and well-behaved. We never got a gold flag, but we did get plenty of red ones. Mrs. Martin came to get us and saw the red flag. She went over to Ruth, the lunch lady, and talked with her for a few minutes, and then came over to our table and said, "Quietly stand up, push your chairs in, and walk single file back to your classroom. When we get there, sit at your desk, put your head on your hands, and do not say anything or look up for anything. You will remain in this position for the entire 45 minutes you would have had for recess outside. It's a shame you will miss out on this beautiful day outside, but you had to get a red flag, and your grades for the quizzes this morning were terrible." After sitting there for a few minutes, I looked over at my friend Kevin. I pointed at my NFL tin lunchbox on my desk. I started slowly pushing it up to the front of my desk. With each push, it got closer and closer to falling off the edge of the desk. Kevin was in horror. "Don't do it," he whispered to me. "We will not have recess for a month," he said. I could not resist. I pushed it up some more, and then a little more, and then a little more, and then bam! It made a loud bang as the tin lunchbox hit the tile floor at just such an angle that it popped open, shooting my thermos towards Mrs. Martin, hitting her desk. The class was in shock and horror, stunned that I would dare push her buttons that far. Mrs. Martin looked up, saw my lunchbox on the floor, reached over, and picked up my thermos. The class was waiting in almost eager anticipation now for the punishment that was sure to be doled out on me. Sarah Viola even volunteered that it was me that did it, and interjecting her thought that I must have done it on purpose and that it was my entire fault for the red flag, which may have had a small bit of truth to it. Mrs. Martin came over to me, grabbed me by the ear, banging my thermos down on my desk, pulled me outside in the hallway, slamming the door behind her as we left. There we were, face to face in the hallway. Was she going to hit me? I looked at her, and she was smiling, then laughing, then covering her mouth with her hand, laughing so hard now that tears were in her eyes. She finally recovers herself and said to me, "That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I needed that one. Rough day. How about you go back in there looking like I yelled at you, and we'll call it even." "No problem," I said. And that's the conclusion of Chapter 2, Back to School, for the book My Bicentennial Year. Thank you. And now Chapter 6 of the book Shadowbosses. And what I'm going to do to make this a lot easier is I'm going to read the conclusion of the chapter and the summary points. Is there any doubt that the unions are bleeding our country dry, as radio host Laura Ingraham puts it? And as Michelle Caruso Cabrera of CNBC writes, the economy sat on the verge of abyss in 2008, and the massive decline in state tax revenues exposed just how much unions are costing America. It's time for big labor to adjust to the new world. But the government employee unions are refusing to adjust. Instead, they're doubling down. The unions are tapping out the taxpayers in the heavily unionized states. They're doing it with outrageous salaries, overtime, and pensions for government employees that they thought that they negotiate with their bought and paid for politicians. They're killing private enterprise, and taxpayers are fleeing heavily unionized states for the greener and freer pastures of the less unionized states. America is becoming two distinct nations, the union nation and the free nation. And where we go from here is anyone's guess. Summary points. About half of all state and local government revenue is now spent on pay and benefits for state and local employees, and that is increasing. Many union contracts allow workers to hike their pay by performing largely useless work, like police officers in Englewood, New Jersey, being paid $3,000 a year extra for showing up to work 15 minutes early to change into uniform, or being paid $25,000 or more in extra duty pay to stand around construction sites. Union contracts also may allow government employees to increase their pensions considerably by working extra overtime in the last years before retirement. States with high rates of unionism have heavier state tax burdens and slower employment and income growth than less unionized states. The most likely states to default on their obligations have an average unionization rate 20% higher than the other states. Right-to-work states show far more growth in average real personal income, 24.9%, than heavily unionized states, 7.8%, from 2000 to 2010. Median state debt per person is nearly 3 times higher in heavily unionized states than in lightly unionized states. Government pensions are destroying state finances. California's per capita unfunded pension liability is over $13,500 per person. Connecticut's is $17,622, and Rhode Island's is $20,271. In contrast, less unionized states have an average unfunded pension liability per person of $10,030. Still bad, but much better. Unions are changing the demographic map of the United States as taxpayers flee highly unionized states and move to less unionized states. One consequence is that right-to-work states as a group gained 8 to 9 representatives, and heavily unionized states lost the same number of representatives. Each of the last 3 times congressional representatives were reapportioned based on population. And that was Chapter 6 of the book Shadow Bosses. And next time we'll be covering Chapter 7, Corruption and Conspiracy. Thank you. Who is the socialist? He is the man that is spiritual. He's the man that seeks consensus. He's subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He is informal and terminally unique. He is childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to tune in to the John and Ken Show, which is an excellent example of
how true conservatives communicate. It's a radio show that's on KFI AM 640 from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday, and that's Pacific time. So that's an excellent show to listen to. And other than that, until next time, remember to be honest, to be smart, to be beautiful, and to remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.